Oh, what is it? Is that lava? Is it lava? No, it's not lava. You know what it is though? That's lubricant, and that is the metal in your gun, or whatever it is you're lubricating. Yep, I made another PowerPoint. Lubes 101. So first off, I own a lubricant company. This is not a sales pitch for our lube. There are a lot of great companies that make lubes, just like there's a lot of companies that make great food, a lot of companies that make great clothes, great guns, great sights, great optics, you name it. You find the one you like and you go with it. Sometimes when you're supporting a brand, you're supporting the brand and the people behind the brand as much as you are buying the product. That's my take on it. This isn't a sales pitch, but I will talk about our lube in this video, and there are other great lubes on the market. Mine's the best though. That said, I want to do a couple of videos on different things to think about with lubrication. Lubes 101. So why synthetic? So there's a lot of folks that say you can use anything on your gun. You could use motor oil, you can use Mobil 1. You're right, you can. You can use anything on your gun. That doesn't mean it's the best thing. Just like I can eat McDonald's all day and I'm having food, right? I could also eat very nutritious, healthy food. I could buy any tires, or I could buy tires that specifically fill the needs I have. For example, I drive on the highway a lot, so I use a tire that is good for the highway, good for the rain, good for the snow, and will help me if I get stuck in some mud. But they're not mud tires, right? If I spend all my time as a logger or a guy on construction sites in the mud, I probably would not want the same tire. You get what you pay for. That's another thing. But let's talk real quick about some properties of lubes. So something we got to think about is what's actually happening. That picture that we started with was showing two surfaces. Have you ever heard the word asperity? I got the definition up here, asperity. It's a noun, and the first use of the word is harshness of tone or manner. He pointed this out with some asperity. To use it in a sentence, geez, Mickey, that CarryTrainer guy, uses some real asperity when he talks about douchebags on the internet shooting guns. Or it could be used in the sense of metallurgy. Harsh qualities or conditions, the asperities of harsh and divided society, or a rough edge on a surface. A plural form, asperities, the asperities of the metal surface. So, you know, when we look at something like this beautiful 44, and we see this smooth stainless, we think, man, that's really smooth. Well, it is. It is smooth as far as we're concerned. But when you start to zoom in with magnifying glass, you start to see stuff like this. So this is a finished metal surface, blown up dozens and dozens of times. This is an asperity. Looks like a little mountain range, right? Or if you were sanding wood, that's what it looks like. That's finished metal. So this is some nickel boron. I just chose this picture because it's a high-end finish. I'm not selling you nickel boron or telling you to use nickel boron, but nickel boron is a finish to a gun, just like, so we could look at something like this Glock finish, right? This is a good finish. This is a better finish. Why? Well, if you look at this under a microscope, this finish, it has these columns. They're like little caps, right? Little phalluses is really what they look like. And what happens is those smooth parts, they're like my fingertips rubbing together instead of coarse, sharp edges like we saw in this picture, right? So I'm not telling you anything about nickel boron other than finishes. What they're for, a finish like this, is it's meant to create better lubricity, to reduce friction between parts. So what's going to have less friction? A bunch of round parts touching or sharp edges grating against each other? Clearly parts or these round parts. Here's another finished piece of metal. You know, you don't see this stuff, but that is literally what is on the surface of this gun. The surface of this gun, you might think it doesn't matter because these parts aren't rubbing together, but when we start to think about the finished parts inside of this gun, when this action's moving, right? Those are metal surfaces that look like this, that are rubbing together. That's why when you dry fire a gun over and over, it may and probably will feel better with time, right? Because those parts have ground on each other, There's a scripture that says iron sharpens iron, right? That's why. So we'll keep going. This is that picture I started out with. Imagine two metal surfaces. All the lube's there for is to fill in the space between them, right? And there, you could go deep into the weeds, and this is something we'll talk about in future videos, like hydraulic lubrication. When you think about down in the bottom end of your engine where your crankshaft's at, you're using hydraulic lubrication. That crankshaft, the rod journals, and all those parts are using hydraulic lubrication, which is why if the oil pump on your car goes out or you don't change the oil, you blow your engine up, right? This is where the rubber meets the road. In reality, we see, let's pull the slide off of a blaster here. We'll grab this PX4 Storm. So we think about surfaces, right? On this gun, we've got these points, right? Here, and then the inside of the rail where those parts rub along, right? We've got areas where the barrel is mated to different surfaces. We've got areas where that barrel may rub around the slide. We've got areas in the action that are rubbing together. Boy, this thing needs a clean job. And some of those components maybe are plastic or polymers touching. So of course the metal is probably going to win out over the plastic or the polymer. That's what's happening here. And when we see it, we see these surfaces. Let's grab another gun yet, like a good old-fashioned Glock here. We see these and we think, oh, no big deal. You know, it looks clean, put a little lube on it, it's good. Well, in reality, you have high and low points, and those high and low points are really the contact points. Those are the points that are supporting the gun. That's why a really good gunsmith, let's grab a gun real quick just so I can show you what I'm talking about. I've got a beautiful, beautiful 10mm long slide. I've showed you this before. One of my mentors, a buddy of mine, Bob Housingay, a 6-time national pistol shooting champion, IPSC shooter from the early days, he built this. It's tight. Oh boy, is it tight. And it locks up like Fort Knox. Why? Because the mating surfaces, he's lapped them. He's smoothed them out so that where they need to touch, they touch smoothly and cleanly. It's not just a bunch of random points. And that's why not old, but gunsmiths that aren't very good can just build up or make certain areas touch to make the action feel good. But in time, as that gun breaks in, it goes from feeling real tight like this to sloppy, like a worn out bee-hole. Nobody likes that. Nobody. So fluid qualities, right? Well, I can just use whatever. Here's another example of an asperity, right? Pretty interesting, and this would be a cross section. This would be a cross section, and you got these high points. That would be, let's grab like this wheel gun right here. You know, as you're working through that double action, it might feel really good, but at a certain little spot, you might feel a little grittiness. Well, at a microscopic level, that's what you're feeling. That's what that grittiness is. It is an asperity in the metal surface, in the contact surfaces. So I borrowed this from Castrol. Lubrication rule: the right amount, important. The right lubricant, which is important. The right place and the right time. Well, that's interesting. So the right amount. Larry Vickers, super respected guy. Larry's got a video out where they literally dunk an AR and an M9 Beretta into a literal like gallon of motor oil, and then they shoot it to show you like it's still gonna work. So a lot of guys don't wanna over lubricate, and the argument is, well, too much lube, and there are certain areas, so we're not gonna go deep into that, but there's definitely certain areas of striker fired guns you don't want lube down in the striker channel and things like that. But guys they use an argument that, well, if you got too much lube on there, it's gonna attract sand and dust. Well, I don't know about you guys. I'm not in the desert fighting. Now, I was today out on a farm where it was very windy, and dust from the fields where they were cutting soil was blowing everywhere. That would stick to the gun, but you know what? I'm not in a battle scenario. I can come home at night and wipe my gun out. You wouldn't leave the house with your gun, your car, without oil in it. You shouldn't do it with your gun either. The thing is, these guns operate in spite of having lube because of advances in metallurgy, because of advances in design. But we need to have lube in them. So we talk about the right lube. So I ran a tree service for years. I still run my chainsaws often. Some bar and chain oil. I could put bar and chain oil on one of these guns. If you've never run a chainsaw, bar and chain oil is about the consistency of corn syrup or cheap pancake syrup, not maple syrup, because that's a thinner consistency, but this stuff is the thickness of, let's see if you can hear it in my lapel mic. Imagine corn syrup or really heavy, cheap pancake syrup. It's very thick, it's very sticky. Why? Well, what's it for? Chainsaw is spinning, right? And this stuff is being added to the chain because if it wasn't, that chain would get so hot from friction that it would stretch out and fall right off the bar. As well, it's lubricating that chain between the chain and the wood. Well, if this stuff was thin, like gun oil, it would just go flying off. This stuff, and I'm going to show you some, is very, very sticky. So let's see if I can pour some into the cap here. That's what I'll do. I just want you to see it, and this will further illustrate the point that I want to make about. So you see this? It's not even dripping off my finger. It's that sticky. There's a big drip. There she goes, there she goes, there she goes. Come on, you. Come on, you. So this has a very high viscosity. Look at that. Bloop. Very high viscosity. So viscosity, just fancy way for saying the thickness of the oil. But viscosity changes as temperature changes. So a chainsaw, man, that's getting hot. All that friction of a high RPM chain. So this is good for that. This isn't good for what we're doing. Well, Mick, I use motor oil. You can put motor oil on your guns. I don't care. But guess what? The bottom end of an engine is not the same conditions as what's happening on your gun. Here's the thing. The bottom end of your engine, you have a pump. You have a filter that is pumping oil through the engine. That oil is being cooled. That oil is being cleaned, and that oil is continually being washed all over the surfaces of your car. If you've never heard this, then you don't understand auto mechanics. Check it out. But I like to talk about this because, to the best of my knowledge, this gun does not have an oil filter or an oil pump. Let's put this PX4 back together. I know that Langdon Technical Technologies builds badass guns, but they have not added any. There's no oil pump or oil filter on this gun. Nope, haven't seen it. This Wilson Combat Beretta, no oil pump, no oil filter. This Langdon Vertec, no oil pump, nope. This Smith, no oil pump, no oil filter. I don't need to keep going through it. So you're literally taking something that was designed for a very specific set of criteria and expecting it to work. Will it work? Of course it will. Now, you can buy that oil, you can use it, you'll get a decent result, but why use it if there's something that's actually made for what we're talking about? So let's look at something else. I like cooking with grapeseed oil. I use this for different things. Grapeseed oil is a great oil. This has a high smoke point, 485 degrees. So if you're cooking something at high heat in a pan, good stuff. Why and when would you use this? Well, everybody likes to use extra virgin olive oil because EVO, as they call it on the cooking shows, is supposed to be super healthy for you. Well, the problem with extra virgin olive oil is it's so refined that it's got a very low smoking point, which means that you put it in a pan that's pretty hot and you're going to burn and scorch that oil. So I use this, if I'm cooking at higher temperatures, I use this on the grill. I don't use the EVO. I use the extra virgin olive oil when I'm sauteing something at low temperature or when I'm going to eat it raw, uncooked, right? So could you lube a gun with this? Yep, you could. But what would happen as soon as I put this all over a gun? I could take this, I could lube a gun up with this. There are companies that have used coconut oil, canola oil, and other food grade oils to sell gun oil, And you could do this. You could put this on a gun and you could go out and shoot it and it would work pretty good. It's going to add that layer of fluid. What's going to happen though, as soon as I take that gun and I put it in the gun safe over here and lock it up and I come back in a month or two, this stuff's going to turn rancid and it's going to rot. It's going to go bad and it's going to get all sticky inside the gun. So oil has to do something in addition to just creating lubricity. It's got to do things like protect from corrosion, right? It's got to do things like maintain that corrosion protection and then that lubricant over time. So if you're the kind of guy that shoots a bunch and you constantly are cleaning the gun, constantly relubricating, something like motor oil is not a bad call because you can just keep applying more and more and more of it. But again, I'd rather buy something that's going to work really well. So synthetics versus mineral oil. When we think mineral oil, many of us think of the clear oil that comes in the bottle at the pharmacy. Mineral oil, in an industry term, means oil that comes out of the ground, right? Bubbling crude. So mineral oil versus synthetic oil. If you could imagine, and I should have put one in this video, imagine marbles, all the same size marbles. That is synthetic oil. It is literally created where the molecules are about the same size. Now, conversely, go over to mineral oil and imagine all those same size marbles with some big marbles, maybe with some baseballs that are rough with the strings, maybe with a couple basketballs in there, maybe with some gravel, smooth gravel, but some gravel in there that's kind of irregular. They're all gonna slip and move around each other, but there's gonna be friction that doesn't exist with the synthetic because it's been modified, it's been created through chemicals to have the same size molecular structure or much more similar. Go look at it under a microscope. If you just Google mineral oil or regular automotive oil under a microscope versus a synthetic variant, you will see what I'm talking about. So that's really cool. The other thing is with like especially our oil, Gunfighter Gun Oil, bing! This stuff has a very wide operating range. So certain oils are not made to get to the same temperature. In order for them to work at a wide range of temperatures, there has to be a give and take. This stuff, because of the nature of it, and this is what it looks like in a bottle, it's pretty clear. Why? Well, the way that this stuff is formulated, why we use this oil, there's no scents, no additives, and why would you have additives? Well, you'd have additives that do all kinds of different stuff. Additives that are cleaning agents, additives that are anti-foaming agents, additives that help keep those other things in suspension so they don't separate, additives that stop the stuff from getting sticky, etc. This is got very few of any of, there's no scents, there's no colors. Why? Because when those things separate, that's when you go to your gun safe and you find that the gun is stuck shut. That's the additives that have separated over time. So we don't have any of that. So there's some really good oils on the market that the military uses, that are advertised to be used by big agencies. That doesn't mean that they're the best. It just means that they're good. And a lot of those have stuff in them that will separate in time. So long and the short of it is this: keep the gun lubed. Don't apply lube where it doesn't belong. So it is important. Go online, read about your gun, what parts should have oil and shouldn't, and then apply it liberally. This is a machine. These guns are machines. Metal to metal contact requires lube. Even if you've got high-end MP3 parts like some of these Langdon guns do, you still want to have oil there because MP3, for example, as those parts are wearing, you're literally wearing the surface off. That's what it's designed to do. At a molecular level, those coatings, MP3 has a component that is slowly, it's a solid, is worn off and is creating lubrication between the parts. Pretty darn cool. But if you've got an oil on there, you're going to minimize that loss. Find out what your gun needs and then apply it liberally. You know, for 10, 12, 15, 20 bucks a bottle, depending on what you buy. I would rather buy a couple of these a year and keep my guns working forever than the other way around. And I tell you what, having literally trained thousands of people now, one thing I see, I can hear it, man. I can hear somebody racks a gun and you're like, oh, that is dry as the desert. A lubed gun, it should sound wet. It should sound smooth. It should sound like you're treating the metal with love, man. So, brief intro here to lubricants and guns. If you're watching this and you're kind of an aficionado, you love talking lube, you may be like, well, you didn't talk about this, you didn't talk about that. Guys, we could get a chemist on here that specializes in these things and talk for hours. I wanted to broach the subject, and my channel, my business, Gunfighter Gun Oil, is available at CarryTrainer.com. It is the world's best lube. I guarantee that you will like it. That's all I got to say about that. Be well, stay wet, guys. Stay wet.
All right, ready? Go ahead, start at 50-50. 50-50, ready, and go. Keep working, keep working. And time. Good. It's over when I tell you it's over, okay? Okay. Go.
It's over. Right, yeah, right in the nut.
You got shot knife in the sack?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Hey, brutal.
I see you, man. All right,
I
switch
get
it over.
again. All right.
Ready? 50-50.
Ready?
And go. Time. And go. And time. Good.